Welcome the Facebook and YouTube audience first, or
Yeah. Okay. What do I say for that?
Welcome.
Welcome.
I love when we have Mike on.
So do I. Let's go.
Okay, everybody settle down. Single file lines. Make sure you have your doctor's note and your ID ready right through this door.
Next.
Okay. Hey, I got my doctor's note right here, and here's my idea.
Bill Smith. Okay. Says here chronic back pain.
Oh yeah, it is really real bad. I haven't been able to sleep. I need it. What you have?
Well, looks good to me. Your application is approved. Here's your medical marijuana card. And remember to stop by the gift shop for a free pack of gummy ganja edible peach rings. Next.
Hey, yes, sirree. Got my note right here.
Okay, let me see that. Mr. Newcomer. Okay, it says here you've been experiencing bouts of excruciating pain in the cilium. Not familiar with that.
Oh, yeah. A lot of people ain't heard of that neither. It's in my eyelashes.
Your eyelashes.
Yeah. Yep, my eyelashes. They hurt. Happens once or twice a day, usually when the wife's around. Terrible pain, terrible pain. Doc says that medical marijuana might just do the trick.
Okay, Mr. Newcomer. Looks like everything checks out. Here's your medical marijuana card, and you may want to look into our new line of Beam Me Up Scotty THC Cosmetics. The not-so-clear eyes drops will probably do the trick. Next.
Hello. How are you? Here's my ID, but most people just call me Pastor John.
Pastor, huh? You sure you should be here?
I mean, God gave every seed-bearing plant, right?
Cannabis and the Christian? On this episode of Rural Pastors Talk.
Thank you for joining us for another edition of Rural Pastors Talk, a podcast highlighting the advancement of Christ's kingdom in rural places just like the town you live in. The rural church is not the baby pool we splash around in before moving on to bigger opportunities. It's not the place we're confined until we can take off those training wheels. And it is not God's penalty box as a punishment for breaking the rules. No, Jesus died for his people. And as long as Christ's people live in rural places, a vibrant, healthy, multiplying presence of his church will be there too. Hello, my name is TJ Freeman. I am the lead pastor at Wellsboro Bible Church. I am joined with my fellow co-worker.
Hey there, DJ. It's Joe, and I am your fellow co-worker.
That's right. More to come on that later. And we are joined with our special friend and repeat guest,
Mike Conroy.
who pastors at
Grace Fellowship in the town of Tunkhannock, Pennsylvania.
same highway, 2 hours away,
Yes.
right on Route 6. Hey, on this episode of Rural Pastors Talk, humor in the pulpit. A good idea or not? Pot, pastors, and the people of God. We're joined by special guest Todd Miles, author of Cannabis and the Christian, who's going to help us think through the matter of marijuana use amongst Christians. So Todd is an elder at his church, Hinson Baptist Church, and he is also a professor at Western Seminary. He lives in Portland, Oregon. We're super happy to have him here. Joe is also going to tell us how a railroad spike can be used to field dress a deer. And a quote from Thomas Brooks to bait your hooks. Guys, the question I have for you is this. Should you use humor in the pulpit? Yes or no? And why?
It's got to be good humor. It's got to actually be funny and sparing.
That's asking a lot, I think. For a lot of people. Yeah.
Certainly of me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you joked in the pulpit
Yeah.
during the sermon?
Well, not like in the heavy part of the sermon. Maybe like in the setup and the context of the sermon.
Or after the heavy part, like
Or
you're all sinners, and then here's a little joke to lighten the mood.
Yeah, well, here is an example. I will be starting off a sermon, and very rarely anymore do I do an introduction based on like a movie. But one time I asked the folks if they had ever seen, I don't know, let me just say The Batman, for instance. And people raise their hand, and I'm like, you bunch of sinners.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like that one.
Yeah,
So-
that's I'd call that a pastor joke.
Yeah.
Not great.
You said it should
Pastor
actually be funny.
Yeah.
Okay. Mike, what do you think?
So I think a lot of it just depends on your personality. So I think Some people are good at it. Some people are not going to be good at it. My general opinion is if you have prepared the joke, it's probably bad.
Yeah.
Bad in a moral sense or bad in it's just
Unless you're
bad,
good
don't
at
use
It's
it?
not
writing
going to be a
jokes.
good joke.
Yeah,
like
okay.
so
You're talking
just-
pragmatics.
So I
Yeah.
like listen. I'll pick on. So okay. Here's a great one. Guy preached at our church twice. He came back, and the joke was I got asked to come back again, which must mean that I did fine the first time.
Yeah, that's not very.
Or when he preached the first time, it was that's a very classic.
Does he listen to this
Yeah.
podcast?
I think he does.
Oh.
Yeah. So shout out to unnamed pastor. But
Yeah.
so I got some guys here from my church. My jokes are probably pretty terrible, honestly. I think they're
James
funny.
is shaking his head. Yes.
So yeah, okay, yeah.
Ben is giving you a eh.
Yeah. So the thing, here's the thing. A joke I used on Sunday was about. I didn't even explain it at all. Gave no context for it. It was a true story. I got battery acid in my eye, and I didn't explain it all. And I thought it was funny to just not explain it and throw it out there and just say that I did that. But I don't think anybody else did.
No. Yeah.
I tell jokes for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. You came here
Yeah.
today to preach
Yes.
at our Equipped Pastors Gathering,
Yep.
and you started with a joke.
Really? What was the joke?
Hi, that's my intro.
Oh, so stupid.
Do you remember?
I do now. Yeah, I do
Oh
now.
man.
Yeah. So I don't prepare jokes. I tell them if I think they're funny. I'm the kind of guy who could tell a joke and preach a very serious sermon
Yeah.
at the same time.
For sure.
Some guys I don't think can, and they probably shouldn't. Yeah.
I fall into that category. I occasionally can pull off a joke that I don't have to explain
Yeah.
later to the congregation.
Yeah.
Usually when I tell them it's a joke, they laugh at the poor nature of my joke
Execution.
telling skills, which
Because they
gives
love
me-
you.
Yeah, there's some redeeming value. I tried something this week that I have never ever done. I planned a joke
Okay. I did too.
Oh,
Actually. this
okay.
week. Yeah.
and I put a picture on the screen of something.
Oh yeah.
Josh,
man.
that was funny.
It was funny.
Okay.
I was about to. So TJ's talking about this picture that Michelangelo painted. Who painted
Vinci.
Da Vinci? Da Vinci paints the Last Supper painting, and then
Inaccurately.
TJ said there's a less popular painting concerning Jesus' conversation with Philip in John 14, and then he puts it up and it's the facepalm emoji. I was about to Google this,
Okay.
this
it
photo.
was solid for me.
Yeah.
For
okay.
me,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It caught. It was good.
I was able to get it across seriously,
Yeah.
so that even Josh was about to Google.
I was.
I
I
thought
was
that was a
like.
win.
I was like. What is this photo? I've never heard of this before.
But I have a very dry sense of humor, which is why people usually don't know that I'm joking. You've known me long enough to tell when I'm joking, and I can tell
Yeah.
you know when I'm joking because you give me a look like you should just stop. Yeah.
See, no one knows when I'm joking
Right.
or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Spurgeon said,
Terrible.
"If you had known how many other jokes I kept back, you would not have found fault with the one I said."
Ooh, there you go. That's good.
Yep.
Yeah. I think it's okay to be part of a family and a body and really enjoy each other. Even though there's a bit of a more formal, there's a much more formal relationship taking place when preaching is happening, but to still enjoy that. Like there's things in our family at home where it might be more formal and might be a more serious moment, but you can bring some levity
Mm-hmm.
even into that. And there's a little bit of that I think could be appropriate from the pulpit.
I like segues maybe a little bit more than jokes.
Oh yeah.
Yes. When do people tell a lot of jokes?
When they're
Hi.
Smoking
Yeah.
pot.
you are the segue king.
Well done.
Speaking of smoking pot, I've already introduced the man, but we are really thrilled to have Todd Miles here. So without further ado, let's get to it. Okay, so since the days of Peter and Paul, believers have been struggling with this concept of Christian liberty. Do I eat the meat? Do I not eat the meat? Do I play cards and dance and go to the movies, or do I not? And do we allow drums in our worship, or should we not? Well, into that mix, Todd, you've introduced a really interesting question. Should the Christian use marijuana, or should he not? So I just have to ask you, should we be bringing more than just a dish to pass to the next church potluck?
Yeah. Well, I joked earlier about as long as you pass it to the left, then it's totally cool. I know that's kind of a question in jest, but it's a significant issue. the pot brownies are given away in my neighborhood as housewarming gifts, and we've had people in the church ask, "What am I supposed to do with this? How am I supposed to respond?" So I that's a good question. It's a good question.
Yeah, I think historically, we've kind of been able to just look at that whole topic and say it's illegal, don't do it. But the way the world has been changing, we as Christians, and especially as pastors, need to have an answer beyond just it's illegal, don't do it. So one of the things I found really helpful in your book is you present that argument and then kind of help us think carefully through the topic. So I thought maybe a helpful question to start with, when we think about marijuana in general, have you seen some unhelpful ways that Christians might be thinking about marijuana right now that we need to process more carefully?
Yeah. Yes. So the first one is just completely relying upon the law to determine what is right and wrong, right? So that it was wrong because it was illegal, but now that it's right, well, now it must be okay. Or I'm sorry, now that it's legal, it must be okay. I think that's unhelpful and sub-Christian. Perhaps in the past, we could have leaned into what civil and federal laws were as a helpful way of determining what right and wrong are. But if we open our Bibles, we realize that we really can't do that, and it's getting harder and harder to justify that. And then another unhelpful argument, I think, is just the idea that, well, it's natural. God made it. Doesn't Genesis 1 and 2 teach that whatever God makes is good? And of course, it is true that in Genesis 1, God created everything, including plants. And I would not argue with the person who said that the cannabis plant is a part of God's creation. But just because God makes something and calls it good doesn't mean that every use of it is good. And so lots of things in God's good creation can be misused. I think that's why there's sin. I don't think Satan's given us anything, right? I think he just perverts and distorts the good gifts that God has and that he has given us. So, if a person said, "Hey, God made it, therefore it must be good," I would say, well, I agree to a point, but that doesn't mean that we can use it however we wish without ramifications.
Okay. Hey, Todd, here's a question too. A lot of the arguments both for and against marijuana use kind of flow out of a person's own sense of morality or their own feelings. Somebody for might say, well, it doesn't hurt me at all, and it just relaxes me and chills me out. I'm good. It's no problem. But then somebody who's like opposed to it, it comes at it from the opposite standpoint. So it's almost like there's a lot of unsubstantiated sorts of arguments there, and people are not finding any sort of common ground at all. Is there any sort of objective evidence that we can use to see how marijuana actually does affect our bodies in both the short term and the long term, and why it would be harmful?
Oh yeah, there's a growing body of evidence, especially now that marijuana has been legalized in so many states. It's a little bit easier to track people who are using. There's the negative impact of marijuana has to be taken into consideration if we're going to make wisdom issues about its use. And I think there is a lot of objective data out there. Three areas of concern that I would raise that the person who is choosing to use marijuana needs to be aware of. One, there's this canard out there that marijuana is not addictive. Well, in point of fact, it is. Now, it's not as addictive as opioids or tobacco, that sort of thing. But just because it's not as addictive doesn't mean that it is not addictive. About almost 10% of regular cannabis users will develop an addiction to it. And an addiction is usually defined as a person who risks harm to self and others in order to meet this need. And then there's other layers to it, but about 1 in 10. And if you're a teenage user, that number rises to about 16-17% of regular users. A regular marijuana user would be someone who uses 3 to 4 times a week. So that's one. Two, there's a growing body of evidence that the psychoactive effects of marijuana, the pathway there is THC. It has a real negative impact on brain development. Now, this is a risk that is applied to young people, but it's heavens, it feels to me like it's just been proven. The amount of evidence is overwhelming that THC interferes with brain development. And the problem with that is that like the female brain, it's pretty much fully formed age 21, 22, 23, somewhere in there. But for males, it's about 28, 29. And so if you're a regular user into your teens and 20s, you're doing something for which it's not going to recover. So, I mean, it's not like you stop doing pot and then your brain catches up. It impacts the development of your brain and you can't get it back. There have been some studies, or one in particular that's disputed, but it's out there, where the clinician found an 8-point drop. Wow. As much in IQ. And that's a lot. You know, when the average IQ is 100 and everybody is in that 80 to 120 range, 8 points is a lot. And then the third risk that I would say someone needs to take into consideration is there's, again, growing evidence of the link between mental illness and cannabis use, especially if you have a genetic predisposition towards mental illness. It's terrifying. So people need to take those kinds of things into consideration. I think those are objectively facts. It doesn't mean that everybody who smokes is going to develop a mental illness. It doesn't mean that everybody who uses marijuana is going to, you know, suddenly get stupid or something. But those are strong considerations for at least the dangers and risks. And there's many others.
So on the last point, the mental illness one, I know people who have a prescription for marijuana to treat a mental illness.
Yeah.
So, well, I'm just saying,
great question.
Yeah.
Great question. It makes no sense to me, honestly. And it would not surprise me at all if, like, in years from now, we look back on that and think, what on earth were people thinking?
Yeah, this person reports that it's helping them.
Yeah.
Huh.
And you know, that's entirely possible, because the cannabis plant is highly complex. It's got many different constituent parts. And so I think we've only scratched the surface of what some of those different components can do. And
I don't want to jump in here too, but I was just
thinking, go ahead.
You know, this on a podcast, you don't know how much to share about your own personal past, but I've got experience, and more than just casual experience with marijuana. And I don't wonder if maybe, and this is how I would be.
That was BC.
This is BC, before Jesus, right? Yeah. So, like, they might be reporting that it's helping them because it's fun to get high and eat ice cream and watch cartoons. You know, that might be. Sure. I'm not saying that it is, but for me in that situation, I can see how I would have made that sort of argument too. And I'm not, you know, casting aspersions on the person that you're sharing that with. Sure. But, like, I know the way my brain works.
Yeah.
That way.
Well, you know, cannabis, as I said, it's highly complex. It's both a depressant and a stimulant. It has properties for both, and so there's some people this is one of the dangers of or problems, not dangers, problems with marijuana and prescribing it is that people react differently to it. And it, you know, like with alcohol, you could pretty much predict what's going to happen with people for the most part, depending on size and weight and that sort of thing. But with marijuana, I mean, you can have two individuals smoking the same exact joint, who are pretty much the same size, and psychoactively they'll react very differently to it. So it's entirely possible that one person feels the depressant effects of THC, and they see that as bringing some sort of benefit to them. And I don't want to argue with people's experience.
Right,
sure.
I can't do that.
No, that's good.
So as this has developed in our country, right? So I grew up, I was a skater, hung out with tons of potheads. So all my early endeavors of evangelism all related around, is this wrong for me to do? If God made it, why is it wrong? So just now, right? So that was 20 years ago. How would you respond to somebody? You're witnessing to them, they're a pothead, and they obviously want to talk about whether or not they can continue to smoke if they become a Christian.
Yeah. Well, I would say that that again, just because God made something doesn't mean that every use of it is good. And so I wouldn't dispute that cannabis is the good creation of a generous God. But so is sexual intimacy, which we know can be misused very dangeously. So is arsenic, right? I mean, that's a good gift of a generous God. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to, like drink a bunch of it or eat a bunch of it, or however people take arsenic. I don't know.
Usually it's a secret. It slipped into there.
Yeah, that's right.
The old arsenic Mickey or something. Is that what it is? Yeah. So I would probably start with that and just say, hey, the Lord is very, very good. And he's demonstrated that in Jesus Christ. And he actually does want good things for you. He's very, very generous, but there are some misuses of some substances that get in the way of good discipleship, and that may very well be unwise. And I mean, I know that the Bible is very, very clear on intoxication. That's wrong. And it's wrong for a number of reasons that the Bible actually goes into. God could have just said, don't get drunk, period. And then that would be it. And he had every right to do that because he's God. He's the creator, the Lord, the King. He can tell us to do such things without explanation. But when it comes to alcohol, he does give explanation as to why intoxication is forbidden. And here's where I think we can draw some links between marijuana intoxication and alcohol intoxication. The Bible tells us that alcohol intoxication is wrong because it impedes our physical abilities. It impairs our mental capacity, and probably worst of all, it impairs moral judgment. All of those things get in the way of honoring God, and any decisions that people make that are not God honoring are going to have negative effects eventually. And marijuana intoxication demonstrably, I would argue, does all three of those things. It impairs mental capacity, it impairs physical abilities, and it impairs our moral judgment. And I think those are demonstrable things. And so at least when it comes to intoxication, I would say, that it's just wrong, and here's why.
So I think about alcohol, and Christians have a variety of views there, from teetotaling to Acts 29, and I wondered if I was going to get any laugh on that.
Yeah,
but.
no, it's good.
Yeah, no, I like that.
Yeah,
that's
great.
So we could make an argument that a glass of wine with dinner is a good gift from the Lord and not a problem. Yeah. Is there a parallel with marijuana where there's a certain amount you could use and enjoy without this intoxication?
I think that's another very good question. And what I really want to, what I don't want to do in the book is to make rules that the Bible doesn't set. I'm terrified of binding people's consciences where the Lord does not do that himself. I think that's tantamount to spiritual abuse, right? So can marijuana be taken in moderation? And so then I think what we're left with are like wisdom questions. So here's a couple wisdom questions that I would ask with regard to that. What effect are you looking for from the marijuana that you want to use it in moderation, recreationally? And I really can't think of one. I wrote about in my book. I went into one of the ubiquitous marijuana dispensaries here in Portland. And they were super helpful, super kind. They answered so many of my questions. And at one point I asked, is there any reason to smoke pot recreationally other than to get high? And the clerk there laughed at me. Just like, no, there's no reason. Now, there are medical reasons. And I think that a lot of people, when they talk about the moderate use of marijuana, they're really looking for some sort of medical benefit to it. Like it calms me down. It helps me to think straight. It helps me with my anxiety, so my mind isn't racing, so I can go to sleep better at night. And I've heard all of those things. I think those are different kinds of questions, though, than well, what about the moderate use of recreational marijuana? Because I really don't know of a benefit to recreational marijuana other than intoxication, which is forbidden. And then I think there's serious discipleship questions that we would want to ask about self-medicating through a psychoactive drug.
Right. Well, kind of going in that direction, if the government makes it legal and it's used in moderation in the privacy of their own home.
Yep.
And you as a pastor or somebody that's discipling them and finds out, is that a discipleship issue? Is that a discipline issue? That's a thorny thing to work your way through. Yeah,
it is. And so, of course, all of life is to live before the Lord. And so I think everything's a discipleship issue.
Right.
That doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. It doesn't mean that it rises to the level of church discipline or sin or that sort of thing. Certainly, I think intoxication would rise to that level. But the scriptures, that they instruct us to take every thought captive in obedience to Christ, that we're supposed to honor the Lord with our bodies, with our minds, our heart. We're supposed to love the Lord with every aspect of who we are. And so everything is a discipleship issue. And if I were that person's pastor, and they shared that with me, first, I would say, thank you for sharing that with me. Because you could have done this secretly and hidden in a hidden fashion, but instead you told me about it. So I assume that you're at least wondering about the wisdom of it, or you at least want some accountability or something like that with it. So I would say thanks for this. And then I would start asking questions as to why and what are you seeking to accomplish through this? Is it helping you in some way? What benefit are you seeing out of it? Are you aware of some of the risks that are involved with this? How does the rest of your family feel about it? A lot of questions like that to navigate through that at least in the book, and when I talk on about like what I'm doing right now, I suppose is I don't want to give a list of rules that this is absolutely wrong and this is the absolute right way to do, because I think anytime we do that and the Bible doesn't give those kinds of answers, we're setting ourselves up for disaster. Because eventually someone's going to open their Bible and they're going to realize that the Bible is not quite as forceful in addressing this issue as like I might have been in talking about it. And then they're going to wonder if everything that I said was just nonsense. And so I think it's better just to frame it, speak loudly where we can speak loudly and more gently in terms of wisdom and discipleship. Is this aiding your worship? Is this aiding your ability to be the kind of disciple that Jesus asks you to be? Are you a better husband or wife or father or mother? Are you more engaged with your family or less engaged with your family due to your marijuana use? Now, we all lie to ourselves a lot as well, right?
Yeah.
That most people don't associate regular marijuana use with greater engagement in anything, right? It's usually like you had mentioned earlier, engaged with, sitting on a couch with a remote control, eating a bag of chips or something. That's not Jesus's plan for godly parenting, say.
Yeah. So, question related to Christians' use of alcohol, which obviously the marijuana is now being brought into the mix, I've noticed a line of thinking that is, I can do this, and I'm not addicted to it. And I know I'm not addicted to it because one time I went 6 months without.
Yeah.
So that actually is the way that addicts will talk through. Like you talked about the deception we have. That is the way that addicts will talk through their addiction and say, well, because I was able to put it on pause for X amount of time. Can you give some helpful means by which to help a Christian discern when almost anything, but particularly these kinds of substances, is actually crossing the line into, no, this is a problem for you to consider?
Yeah. It's interesting. I have an article coming out with the ERLC on Christians and alcohol. Just thinking through this because during the pandemic, hard alcohol sales spiked and a lot more alcohol consumption. What's the wisdom path here? Well, clearly, like the easy one is that intoxication is wrong. And then when we start to think about why intoxication is wrong, then maybe we can apply the reasons why intoxication is wrong and think maybe a little bit on a sliding scale about how to use things in moderation, like alcohol. Now, again, there's a big difference between marijuana and alcohol because marijuana, typically the easiest pathway for it, the most common is through smoking. That there's no other way to get something into your bloodstream that's quicker aside from just mainlining, right? So it's the moderate use of marijuana is almost like a misnomer. We usually don't associate marijuana with language of moderation or innocuous. It's very quick acting and it's because it's going right into your bloodstream. Okay, but that being said, like for alcohol and for marijuana, asking the question, is this aiding my worship? Am I doing this with accountability? Because if it's right, then it should stand scrutiny. It should stand up to scrutiny. But if you feel like you have to keep it secret, that should be a signal to you that you might want to bring this out into light, because if it's okay, it's okay. Is my use leading to active, engaged, intentional discipleship? Am I a better father, husband, mother, wife? That sort of thing. What am I willing to risk, or what am I willing to do in order to get that next hit, or that next drink? Am I doing this alone, and why? I think when it comes to alcohol, a decent rule of thumb would be, don't drink alone. If someone in my congregation came to me and said, I need a glass of wine every night in order to sleep, then I would grow concerned about that.
Sure.
I'd say, why? Why do you need this? And it's entirely possible that there could be something that could be prescribed. Self-medication with psychoactive drugs is
dangerous, to say the least.
Dangerous. Yeah, it should be, as pastors, it should be concerning to us if that's what's going on.
Well, I've got another question, a little different direction here. So I have no experience with marijuana, at least to the THC level. But I was using a hemp hand cream earlier. I'm assuming that's okay.
No, that's the worst. Actually.
In trouble,
especially
right to the bloodstream.
Yeah, when you mainline
That's right.
that. It's bad.
So
that's why we gathered you here, TJ.
Thank you. I do appreciate it. So I do get the question sometimes, what about CBD? Like, is it okay if I grab the CBD oil at the checkout on my way out of the gas station? Is that a problem? Other elements of the marijuana plant maybe that are not specifically THC.
Yeah. So, CBD is not going to intoxicate you. Technically, it is psychoactive, but because it doesn't intoxicate, we often will say CBD is not psychoactive, and I'm fine saying that. And because of that, all of those discipleship questions and concerns that I have about, say, alcohol and THC, they just don't obtain when it comes to CBD. Yeah. So
it's okay.
You could use that hand lotion.
Good.
Yeah.
You down
I
with-
feel so much
it's
better.
expensive.
You're
but,
done with
Yeah.
so there might be a stewardship issue there. But.
Oh man, I felt better. Yeah. Good. Well, listen, I don't want to totally dump the truck here because I would like our readers to go into the book and really kind of start to get their minds wrapped around the entire framework of an argument that comes from a biblical perspective that helps us work through this issue. So I just want to encourage you, brothers listening, Cannabis and the Christian by Todd Miles. You can get it on Kindle. You can get it on Audible. You can get a hard copy. And
Where else can they find
resources
from you?
From me? Well, you can always Google my name at Western Seminary, and you'll see a bunch of sermons and such. I have a podcast that I do with colleagues at Western Seminary called Food Trucks in Babylon. I've written.
Will you tell us? Give us
a couple of books.
Give us a 30-second lowdown on Food Trucks in Babylon. That's
yeah. Food Trucks in Babylon is it's me and another Western faculty member, Ryan Lister. Right now, before that, it was Patrick Schreiner. And we're just trying to think about how to be faithful in a post-Christian context. And so that's the Babylon part of where we are. Not that Babylon was ever Christian or post-Jewish or anything like that, but it feels like Babylon where I live. Yeah. And then the food trucks it's just kind of a paying honor to one of the good things about living in Portland. But it also allows us to say, hey, there's a lot of variety in the things that we talk about. So
good deal.
Hey, you, by the way, didn't look as Portland as I expected.
Man, I don't belong here. I am smack dab in the middle of hipsterville, but I am actually from far more rural stock. I grew up in like small farming towns, logging towns, nice. Cowboy towns, that sort of
That's
thing.
why we invited you on.
That's right.
Good. Yeah.
And
yeah, I am as non-hipsterish as you can get.
I read that in the book, and and you mentioned the lack of ability to grow a beard, and I wanted you to know you're in good company because neither Joe nor Josh.
I'm with you, brother. You and me.
Yeah. It's good.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, you can't see it, but this is like 4 days growth for me right now. So.
Awesome. Well, brother, it's been a pleasure. We do have 2 questions that we like to ask all of our guests, and I'll let Joe pick one first.
What is your favorite ice cream?
My favorite ice cream. So there's an ice cream shop in town called Salt and Straw here in Portland. It's rather iconic. They have new flavors every month, but occasionally they bring out the cinnamon roll flavored ice cream, and it's got actual cinnamon roll dough and a nice cinnamon flavor. That's like one of my favorites. But I love ice cream.
Oh, good.
I mean, Solomon in all of his glory did not get to eat ice cream. So
right.
it is always a treat.
Yes.
Always a treat.
Yeah, for sure. And that is you get 2 points for a unique flavor that we've never heard before. So well done. Nice. And if ever in Portland, we'll have to look it up.
How many points do I get for not cracking the joke about all those potheads going to that ice cream
shop? Well, you just lost your eternal reward, brother.
Oh, man.
Yeah. The second question is, what is your favorite hymn?
My favorite hymn. Let me think here. I have a hard time singing. It's my favorite hymn, and I can't remember the name.
That's okay.
Of it now.
We put you on the spot.
Yeah, Charles Wesley. Not and can it be? It's "Arise, My Soul, Arise." I have a hard time singing that without tearing up.
Awesome. Yeah.
I love that the language of the wounds crying out to God. Don't let that ransomed sinner die.
So
awesome.
Yeah. Solid choice. Thanks, brother. Well, very good. Is there anything we should have asked you or brought up that we did not cover?
My second book is that I did was Superheroes Can't Save You. And so if you ever want to talk comic books or like the latest Batman movie,
All right.
I'm all in on that. So
Nice. Did you see the it's not really a meme, but it was the picture of all the Batmans as it got darker and darker and darker and darker. So the last one was the darkest movie I think ever produced. They had to do special cameras just to film it, according to the Albert Mueller. And so then there's a projection of like 2025, what Batman will be like. It's just a black square.
just a black screen. Yeah. I came back from the Batman, and I thought, I don't think we ever saw the sun in that movie.
Yeah.
No, it was dark and rainy the whole entire time.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like Portland.
There you go.
We might have to do that the next time a superhero, because you love superheroes so much, TJ.
I'm playing the part right now.
TJ will sit out, and we'll have Josh.
There you
back
go.
in.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, Todd, thank you so much for joining us. It really has been a blessing, and we look forward to hearing more from you in the future.
Hey, thank you.
Good. That'd be great. Thanks. This is fun.
Absolutely. God bless. Well, it's time for our standard SOS. I hear it back there. And very quickly, if you would do us a solid and do these three things. One, would you subscribe to this? It just does about as good. Secondly, would you offer a review? We have a review we're going to review at some point. I'll give a hint. It was left on my birthday. And the birthday present I received included criticism.
Oh my.
That's great.
Yes, it was good, from Minnesota. And then lastly, if you would share this episode, share the podcast with a friend, something like that. We really want to see rural pastors connected with one another and sharing good resources. We're not saying this is the good resource, but we're hoping that it does present some things to you that are helpful to you as you seek to minister faithfully for the long haul. So if you could just kind of share that resource, hopefully that would be a blessing. And with that, it's time for
Stuff
Rural
Pastors
Can Use.
Reviews.
We have thrown our dear brother, Mike Conroy, into the ring,
Yeah.
and we've asked him with zero preparation.
Yeah.
We're asking him right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there something in your life
Yeah.
that you would recommend for rural pastors?
So this is, just so you know, the no heads up feels a lot different to you than it does to me. just get out there. So yeah, if you are watching this, okay, if you're watching this, the screen's in front of you, your eyes are watching it. I'm gonna give you a hint before I actually tell you what it is. Okay. What I would like to recommend for your use is K-dramas, Korean dramas. Now, you boys are busy. You boys have a lot on your plate. You come home tired. You come home weary. You have, a lot of you, most of you have wives. And sometimes you don't know what you and your wife can watch together. You struggle to find something because
This is actually going to be fruitful because he's going in a good direction right
yeah,
now.
so you like watching, you pretend that you think the comic movies are amazing and you want to watch those and your wife doesn't, or you're into love stories and she just can't get enough of all of the Rocky movies and you don't know what to do, right? Well, I got you. What you need to do today, so here's the deal. You probably have Netflix. Right? Do you guys have Netflix?
I do.
Yes.
You have Netflix. You have a lot of options right now to get into Korean dramas. And what I would like to wholeheartedly...
So the K stands for Korean.
Yes, K-dramas. What I would like to recommend, if you have Netflix, I recommend that you watch Crash Landing on You. Crash Landing on You. That is great. You will laugh. You will cry. Together with the love of your life, your wife. So that's my recommendation, K-dramas. If you want to seriously get into it, then you need to download Viki, V-I-K-I. It's an app, a streaming app. There's a free version that has minor commercials in it. There's a one you could pay for that is really not that expensive. And then you will want to watch Goblin. You will want to watch Goblin.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. That
You're
is We've recommended that several times here before.
Yeah, I'm sure
Yeah.
that this is like old news. You've heard of it.
This is
right.
but pastors.
Not a movie.
Yeah, it's not a movie. They're like shows.
Okay.
But pastors, this is what I'm saying.
Oh.
Stop wasting your time watching nonsense. There's just so much more to life than the stuff you're watching.
Go subtitles.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, they are subtitled. But then this is the thing. That'll get you into the music. That will get you into the food. The food.
Food is worth it.
And then eventually the spa. But
Oh my goodness! You reviewed the spa last time.
Yes, you
Oh,
did.
did I?
You did. I
Fair enough.
forgot about that.
Yeah, fair enough.
Man, I'm an anime watcher, Mike, so I feel you.
So I got
It's a little different, obviously, but
yeah.
the separate culture
laughed
thing
at
is what
you.
I'm saying. It's the culture thing, and it's always
Yeah.
subbed. No,
Yeah.
yes,
Subtitles are no big deal.
Way better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got to experience the food with you
Yes.
in Queens.
In Queens, New York. Yes.
You shared with a group of Korean brothers and sisters your affinity for their dramas, and they were eager.
It was that developed way different than I thought it was going
They-
to. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they invited us to a restaurant,
Yeah.
and we ate bingsu. Did I say it
Bingsu,
right? Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
So good.
Yep.
Yeah. So if your little rural community has bingsu, you need to go get it.
Yeah, if your rural community has Bingsu, let me know.
I'm coming to you.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to close. No, I don't want to close our time. I almost forgot. Joe.
Yes.
Wait. This is for the next episode.
I think
I'm all out of sorts.
You are. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes we
No,
record.
this quote is for this one, isn't it?
The
Or no?
quote is, and I do want to.
I
Where
know
did you-
he
what
was
book?
going someplace.
I
different.
read something else in the notes that was inaccurate
Where'd you get the quote from? What
That
book?
was his.
from Thomas Brooks.
Where'd you get the quote from?
It's a really cool book. It's really long. It's called Google.
Oh.
Yeah.
So
I was
this-
wondering how you're going to
So,
work
dude,
your way
this
out of
quote
that.
comes from Precious Remedies Against Satan's Devices.
Perhaps.
It does.
Okay.
No, I just read
Good.
it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
You set yourself up. For
I
that
did.
one.
Don't look at the man behind the curtain. Here it is. Thomas Brooks. Your life is short, your duties many, your assistance great, and your reward sure. Therefore, faint not, hold on and hold up in ways of well-doing, and heaven shall make amends for all. Which reminds me of the sermon you just preached. That was super encouraging and right along the same page. Hey, thanks for joining us.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, thanks for being here.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
brother.
so
Thanks,
much.
Mike.
Special thanks to Todd for joining us on the podcast as well. That brother is just a gem. That was a wonderful conversation. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Raise your Ebenezer.
Thank you for joining us for another edition of Rural Pastors Talk, the podcast highlighting the advancement of Christ's kingdom in rural places, just like the town you live in. Josh, if people want to find out more, they should.
Email us at ruralpastorstalk@gmail.com. They can find us on Facebook or they can tweet at us at ruralpastors.
Goodbye.
See ya.